fine that ended up not being a very good one because, of course, Keir Starmer was cleared of any wrongdoing by Durham police from that Currygate event at which he was holding a beer. But for some reason, that seems to have really stuck in Westminster. It's a joke that I've heard from MPs on both sides, and somehow, despite everything that has cut through, I suppose Captain Hindsight as well would be the other one. You do hear people saying that in focus groups. You do hear people talking about Keir Starmer as someone who throws stones from the sideline. So I think in that one as well, Boris Johnson managed to capture a mood, even if both of them are slightly unedifying.
What about Keir Starmer, Charlotte? There was lots of talk early on about how he was going to bring his experience as a barrister. He was going to prosecute Boris Johnson as if he was in a court. The fact that became Prime Minister in April 2020, he became leader of the opposition in April 2020, when there weren't many people in the House of Commons. He could use the quiet hush to his advantage. Did it pan out like that for Keir Starmer, do you think?
I certainly think Starmer found it easier at the start of the pandemic when it was quieter. It did suit his style rather more. You could see it made Boris Johnson uncomfortable as well, not having the uproar around. And then definitely Johnson, as John was just saying, has got more into his stride now that he's got the ability to have those MPs cheering behind him. Although, let's be honest, recently there hasn't been quite as much cheering going on. I think Starmer as well started off, we all used to call him forensic, and he was pretty decent at asking questions, at getting through various difficult points of fact. He seems to have moved a bit away from that recently. There are a lot more jokes. You heard his Jedi mind trick jokes just there. You had the joke about the sinking ship fleeing the rat. I think he's definitely less naturally comfortable with those. I'm not quite sure who's told him that he needs to make more jokes, but I'm not definitely sure that they're earning their salary.
He's been saying some things on a podcast today which are unbroadcastable. He's been doing a lot of swearing, which, that feels like a meeting which has got out of hand. Just finally, John Rentoul, looking back on previous prime ministers, I mean, only when they get forced out in the middle of a term do they know it's their last PMQs rather than losing a general election. Tony Blair, David Cameron, Theresa May all made quite sort of moving speeches paying tribute to the House of Commons chamber and to the noble ideals of politics. Do you think that's what we're going to get from Boris Johnson?
No, that's not Boris Johnson's style at all. He will be much more taken with the Margaret Thatcher model. I mean, it wasn't Prime Minister's questions actually, but it was. I think it was a statement on a European Council after she had pulled out of the leadership contest after the first ballot, but before the second ballot. So before John Major became Prime Minister, she was in the House of Commons, and she was besieged by pro-EU opposition MPs, and she just gave them what for and said, "I'm enjoying this." So I think that's the kind of atmosphere that Boris Johnson will be trying to capture.
And do you think he'll get a big round of applause, John, from across the House, as all of those predecessors did?
He probably will, actually, because Conservative MPs will feel so guilty about having got rid of him. But it's interesting that drives Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, absolutely wild. He really doesn't like clapping in the chamber.
And just with you, John, Charlotte, who do you think of the contenders left would be best at doing PMQs? Charlotte?
Oh, it's slim pickings. I think probably Rishi Sunak, just because he's slick enough not to get distracted by all of the shouting and barracking. John
Rentoul?
No, completely agree. I mean, one of the reasons why Rishi Sunak is head and shoulders above the other candidates that he's very, very good in the House of Commons.
Well, it's really good to speak to you both. That's John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator from The Independent. Charlotte Ivers, Times Radio's political correspondent, looking ahead to the final PMQs for Boris Johnson. So get online right now. Go to the Times Radio YouTube channel. You can watch along live. You can also see my bookcases because I'm broadcasting from home today. Get online now to the Times Radio YouTube channel. Patrick Maguire will join us next. It's the final ever PMQs for Boris Johnson until he makes a comeback.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
It's 12 o'clock. I'm Matt Chorley and this is Times Radio. These are the headlines this lunchtime. Parts of England are being told to prepare for storms after the hottest day on record caused wildfires across the country yesterday. London's mayor says 41 homes were destroyed across the capital. as firefighters experience their busiest day since World War II. The surging cost of fuel and food have seen inflation rise to a fresh 40-year high. Official figures show it now stands at 9.4%, up from May's 9.1%. And Great Britain has claimed gold in the men's 1500 metres of the World Athletics Championship. Jake Whiteman's the first Brit to take home the win since 1983. We'll have a full roundup of the news and sport at 12:30. But now, it's time for this.
PMQs Unpacked on Times Radio. Unpacking the politics and cutting through the crossfire.
Order, order. I call Matt Chorley and Patrick Maguire.
Yes, good afternoon. It's Matt Chorley live on Times Radio, live on the Times Radio YouTube channel. Several hundred people already telling us where you are right now. Go online. Hello from Lima. Hello from Birmingham. Hello from Stratford-upon-Avon. Hello from Australia, Tenerife, Bangkok. Hello to London too. Patrick Maguire, are you there?
I certainly am, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right. In fact, people have been noticing, because I'm broadcasting from home today, Patrick. People have been noticing my bookshelf behind me. And what do I have up here?
Oh, it's not a best-selling book about Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party, is it? Oh, please. Oh, I'm much too modest. Oh, stop.
It's a rare unsigned copy. I can't believe. I think I might have actually bought it, which is why it's not signed. Anyway, there we are. We are bringing you PMQs Unpacked. We will pause the action live from the House of Commons. It's Boris Johnson's last ever Prime Minister's questions. The big question is, how will he wind it all up? I mean, of course, he's just the latest Prime Minister to be forced out by his own party. And no, this is his last PMQs.
we stand for can take pride in that. And that duty to serve my constituents will remain my greatest motivation.
What do we expect, do you think, from Boris Johnson today?
Well, I don't think we're going to get those sort of elegiac, graceful, gracious tributes, are we? I think the problem with Boris Johnson is that he's got one eye in Huyton and one eye in New Brighton, as we say on Merseyside. Is that he's got one eye on protecting his legacy and, you know, being the model of a prime minister, and the other is he is spinning a myth that he can take on the lecture circuit and that he can sell memoirs with, which is that he's been done dirty by an ungrateful party. So I don't think we're going to get dignity in defeat. I think there's a great tradition of graceless winners in British politics. One of them, Doug Hoyle, Lindsay Hoyle's dad, who gave a famously bilious acceptance speech when he beat Roy Jenkins in Warrington. It's usually winners who lose the run of themselves. I think we're going to see the first loser in British politics fail to respond with the dignity you expect. And also, from Keir Starmer, I hear, we're not going to get the customary tribute. Keir Starmer thinks that'd be inauthentic. It was described to me, I apologise in advance for the slightly blue language, as Westminster chumocracy bollocks by a member of his team. I don't think we're going to get any of that from Keir Starmer. He'll wish him well, but that'll be the minimum of ceremony, I think, that we usually expect from these occasions.
In fact, memorably, when Tony Blair stood down, David Cameron, there was a round of applause. Very rare back. I mean, it happens all the time. It was very rare that happened. And David Cameron famously told his MPs in his shadow cabinet to get up and join the standing ovation. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. I'll tell you what, we could go, it's all kind of tributes. There has been a tribute in the just last minute or so from Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, has paid tribute to Boris Johnson. Let's take a listen.
Before I call Kim Leadbeater, it's to ask her first question. It's only fitting to note this is likely to be the final time the Right Honourable Member for Uxbridge addresses the House as Prime Minister. I would like to wish him and his family all the best for the future. Can I say, we've been through many dark times within this House, and none more so than through the pandemic, and always will be remembered for what this House did and the way that you conducted those duties during those dark times, Prime Minister. I understand that members will have differing views about the Prime Minister's performance and legacy, and those views will be sincerely and passionately held, but I remind members that our constituents and others around the world watch these proceedings. Let us conduct them in a respectful manner, focusing on issues and policies rather than personalities. I take this opportunity to remind members of the words of Erskine May. Good temper and moderation are the characteristics of the parliamentary debate. I expect to see that reflected today in the proceedings. I now call Kim Leadbeater.
So there we are. Lindsay Hoyle paying tribute to Boris Johnson's behaviour during the pandemic. Go on then, Patrick. Just one last time.
Well, don't touch the lathe. No, it's. I think that's admirable restraint and courtesy from Lindsay Hoyle, given the lack of respect Boris Johnson and his ministers have persistently showed him, and how quickly Lindsay Hoyle has pointed that out at every given opportunity. I don't think we're going to see the same deference to convention from Keir Starmer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, given that it's a large part, Lindsay Hoyle during the pandemic, he was constantly complaining about announcements being made on the TV and not in the House of Commons chamber, about ministers not abiding by the sort of constitutional niceties. So it's he's done his best to try and rise above that. Well, here we go then. This is PMQs Unpacked, the last PMQs for Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, at least this time round. We here on Times Radio, if you haven't heard us before, rather than just putting it on and going making a coffee, we'll pause the action live as we go along to explain what is going on and to analyse in real time the key exchanges. So here we go for one last time. It's question number one from Keir Starmer.
Can I start by saying to the Prime Minister that I do know that the relationship between a Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition is never easy, and this one's proved no exception to the rule. But I would like to take this opportunity to wish him, his wife and his family the best for the future. can I also put on record our gratitude to the fire and rescue services for all their courageous work yesterday in extreme temperatures. All our thoughts are with those affected by the fires, particularly those that have lost their homes. I join the Prime Minister in his comments about the bombings in Hyde Park and the IRA bombings. I also join him in his comments about the Lionesses. The coverage starts at 7:30 tonight on BBC One, and I'm sure the whole country will be roaring them on. And for anyone who doesn't fancy football, EastEnders is on. So if you'd rather watch outrageous characters taking lumps out of it themselves, you've got a choice. Albert Square or the Tory leadership debates on catch-up.
Oh, dear.
On that topic, Mr. Speaker, why does the Prime Minister think that those vying to replace him decided to pull out of the Sky debate last night?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not following this thing particularly closely, but my impression is that there's been quite a lot of debate already, and I think the public are having an ample opportunity to view the talent, Mr. Speaker, that any one of which, as I say before, like some household detergent, would wipe the floor I mean, today happens to be just about the anniversary of the exit from lockdown last year. And do you remember what he said? He said, yeah, I'm going to remind him, he said it was reckless. It was because we were able to take that decision, Mr. Speaker, supported by every single one of those Conservative candidates, opposed by him, that we had the fastest economic growth in the G7. We're now able to help families up and down the country. If we'd listened to him, it wouldn't have been possible, Mr. Speaker. And I don't think they'll be listening to him either.
I think, Matt, we should call a moratorium on MPs of all parties doing that joke where they say, haha, you know, everybody's taking lumps out of each other and someone's going to get eliminated in the first round and, oh, it's really ugly and everyone's preening themselves. Haha, I'm actually talking about the Tory leadership. Anyway, Love Island's on ITV, as Nadeem Zahawi did last night at the literal Mansion House speech. You know, these people are disgracing the dignity of their office with these terrible, terrible jokes. And Keir Starmer is no exception.
As a form, it's got a proper name, that joke. It's named after... It's a friend of a late friend of Rory Bremner's. Rory Bremner once told me a joke I told was of this form, where you think that you're saying one thing and then you flip it and reverse. I think part of the problem is it's so laboured and obvious that everyone gets there before the punchline.
A Keir Starmer joke being laboured, I don't believe it for a second.
Hard to believe. His tribute, I thought his tribute to Boris Johnson was the absolute bare minimum and no more.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, if Keir Starmer got up at the dispatch box and said, look, I know Boris Johnson is motivated by a sense of duty or public service and he's always put other people first and, you know, I know that he'll be contributing to our national life in future, everybody would look at him and say, what are you talking about this? You don't believe that, and nor does Boris Johnson, actually. So, you know, he was left without any option. And I think it's... you know, that famous dictum, don't say anything nice about someone. Don't say anything about someone if you have nothing nice to say. It doesn't really apply here, does it?
If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't apply
you and I
here,
clearly didn't listen to that closely enough because we can't remember.
Well, no, look at us now. Yeah.
Look at us now. I mean, literally been paid to do this. Right, let's go back to the House of Commons then. Question number 2 for Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer.
Well, I'm impressed he managed to get through that with a straight face, actually. I think the truth is this. They organised the TV debates because they thought it would be a great chance for the public to hear from the candidates first-hand. Yeah. Then disaster struck because the public actually heard from the candidates first-hand. But I am interested in what he makes of the battle for his job. So let me start with a simple one. Does the Prime Minister agree with his former Chancellor that plans put forward by the other candidates are, in his words, I've got them here, nothing more than the fantasy economics of unfunded spending promises?
Well, Mr. Speaker, they know all about fantasy economics because they've already committed to £94 billion of extra tax and spending, Mr. Speaker, which every household in this country would have to pay for, to the tune of about £2,100. It's thanks to the former Chancellor's management of the economy, thanks to this government's management of the economy, we had growth in May of 0.5%. We have more people in paid employment than at any time in the history of this country, Mr. Speaker. And I'm proud to be leaving office right now with unemployment at or near a 50-year low, Mr. Speaker. When they left office, it was at 8%. That's the difference between them and us.
It's not getting any better, is it? I mean, that was Boris Johnson almost doing it. That's what you are, that is.
Well, yeah, look, Keir Starmer will be licking his lips and looks absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to attack the Tories from the right on economic credibility. But that is exactly what those brutal leadership debates over the weekend on Channel 4 and ITV have given him. You know, you couldn't move for lobby journalists like you and I saying this is a gift to the Labour Party after that, you know, hour of blood sports on Sunday night between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak in particular. And this is exactly why, because you've got Tory cabinet ministers and Tory former cabinet ministers on the record trashing the past 12 years of government and also their credibility to run the country and run the economy, which is exactly where Labour is weakest and exactly now, bizarrely, where they find themselves with the strongest line of attack. So you're seeing exactly why, you know, Tory leadership contenders, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak in particular, pulled out of that Sky debate the other night because they have no shortage of barbs to be repelling from Labour now.
Yeah, one thing that struck me is that Lindsay holds quite a lot of leeway here. Keir Starmer is basically asking about the Tory party leadership contest, which in the past, that's the sort of thing that might have got struck out on the basis that it's nothing.
It's not the work of the Prime Minister. Well, I suppose, you know, so I suppose, look, the candidates are talking about Boris Johnson's record. If we're in a sort of valedictory, retrospective mood, you know, it is sort of relevant if the man who was Boris Johnson's Chancellor until 5 minutes ago is saying that his Foreign Secretary is engaging in fancy economics, and his Foreign Secretary, the woman who's still Foreign Secretary, is saying, well, look, the Chancellor until 5 minutes ago has been doing a terrible job and is about to lead us into a recession.
Just on the joke structure, it's called a Langdon. It's named after John Langdon, who died a couple of years ago. The example that Rory Bremner gave at the time, and he wrote a piece about this, revealed it was John Langdon. It's a joke formula where we introduce two subjects and switch them at the punchline. For example, Boris Johnson and his girlfriend introduced their new dog to Downing Street yesterday. He's a bit scruffy and wants to everything that moves, but we'll get used to him, said the dog. You see? That's a slightly better version than the EastEnders ones we have.
I'm slapping my thigh. I'm not sure you can hear that on.
Let's see how we get on. Do the jokes improve as we go back to the House of Commons? This is question number 3 from Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, every Labour pledge made under my leadership is fully costed. Those buying to protect him, Mr. Speaker, those vying to replace him have racked up £330 billion of unfunded spending commitments. But I do note that the Prime Minister didn't agree with his former Chancellor. So what about his Foreign Secretary? She was withering about the government's economic record. She said, again, her words, here they are, if Rishi has got this great plan for growth, why haven't we seen it in the last 2.5 years at the Treasury? That's a fair question, is it, Prime Minister?
Actually, Mr. Speaker, I think everybody would agree that what you saw in the last 2.5 years was because of the pandemic, the biggest fall in output for 300 years, which this government dealt with and coped with magnificently. By distributing vaccines faster than any other European government, faster than any other major economy, which would not have been possible if we had listened to him. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we have the fiscal firepower that is necessary to help families up and down the country, making tax cuts for virtually everybody paying national insurance contributions. The difference between Labour and the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, there's a crucial philosophical difference. Under Labour, families on low incomes get most of their income from benefits. Under us, they get most of it from earnings. Because we believe in jobs, jobs, jobs. That's the difference, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Bob, a sort of bit of ideological ding-dong there, Patrick Maguire. Liz Truss's attacks on Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson sort of brushing them aside and just bigging up his own record rather than getting embroiled in their fisticuffs.
Yeah, he needs to maintain the fiction that he doesn't have a preferred candidate and that he definitely isn't deploying all the firepower of himself and his team and his shock troops to undermine and derail Rishi Sunak's leadership bid, doesn't he? And as you said, proper, Tory red meat there, a proper ideological debate. And that's one of the interesting things about this leadership race, isn't it? In the absence of any debate over policy, this wasn't a leadership race, unlike in 2019, that was sparked by disagreement over policy. It's about personality, and into the breach have stepped candidates who genuinely are scrapping to the death over how the Tory party should run the economy, and we're seeing Boris Johnson take a side in that debate there.
Yeah, well, let's see where he goes now. We've had Rishi Sunak's comments. We've had Liz Truss's comments. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a little bit of Penny Mordaunt now. Let's go back to the House of Commons. It's PMQs Unpacked, question number 4.
Mr. Speaker, inflation is up again this morning, and millions are struggling with the cost of living crisis. And he's decided to come down from his gold wallpapered bunker for one last time to tell us that everything's fine. I am going to miss the delusion. But his Foreign Secretary didn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. She also said that the former Chancellor's 15 tax rises are leading the country into recession. And the member for Portsmouth North was even more scathing. She said, again her words, "Our public services are in a desperate state. We can't continue with what we've been doing because it clearly isn't working." Has the Prime Minister told her who's been running our public services for the last 12 years?
Mr. Speaker, this is absolute. And again, he's doing this completely satirical. This is the government. This is the government that is investing £650 billion in infrastructure, in skills, in technology. He talks about public services. What really matters to people in this country right now is getting their appointments, getting their operations, fixing the COVID backlogs. That's what we're doing. Fixing the ambulances. That's what he should be talking about, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we voted through. That's why we passed the £39 billion health and care levy, Mr. Speaker, which they opposed. Every time something needs to be done, Mr. Speaker, they try to oppose it. He's just a great pointless human bollard, Mr. Speaker. That's what he is.
That's so bad. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at calling someone a great pointless human bollard.
The human bollard. I don't think we need to dignify that with any analysis, do we?
No, I mean the other joke, which again doesn't just lacks sense. He's come down from his gold wallpapered bunker. Can you come down from a bunker?
No, you can.
You come up out of a bunker, presumably.
Yeah, no, that didn't make any sense either, did it?
Right, well, let's see if it gets any. Let's not dwell on it because it's the same stuff going round in circles. Let's see if it improves.
There is no sense of anyone rising to this occasion, is there?
No. Well, give it time. We've still got 2 more questions, Patrick. Let's Don't forget, you can watch along online right now. Go to the Times Radio YouTube channel. Lots of you basically just passing comment on my bookshelves, which is a sad reflection of what's actually happening in the actual House of Commons. Anyway, we'll go back to the Commons now. It's question 5 from Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, if only it was satirical. It's what the future candidates think of his... Mr. Speaker.
We want to get through PMQs because there's quite a few of you wanting to catch my eye. It would be more helpful if we get through in order to do that. Keir Starmer.
I appreciate they may not want to hear what their future leader thinks of their record in government, but I think the country needs to know. If only it were satirical, Prime Minister. It's what the candidates think of the record.
Yeah.
But among the mudslinging, there was one very important point, because the member for Saffron Walden claimed that she warned the former Chancellor that he was handing taxpayer money directly to fraudsters in COVID loans. She says he dismissed her worries and that as a result he cost the taxpayer £17 billion. Does the Prime Minister think that she's telling the truth?
Prime Minister.
Okay, well, this is one of the last blasts from Captain Hindsight, Mr. Speaker, because at least to me, because they were the party. I remember they were the party who are so desperate for us to be hiring their friends with PPE. They wanted a football agent to supply, and a theatrical costumier to supply PPE. Do you remember, Mr. Speaker? We had to get that stuff at record speed. We produced £408 billion worth of support for families and for businesses up and down the country, Mr. Speaker, and the only reason we were able to do it at such speed is because we'd managed the economy in a sensible and moderate way. And Labour, every time they've left office, it's with unemployment higher, they're economically illiterate, Mr. Speaker, and they would wreck the economy.
Boris Johnson is quite enjoying himself, I think. He's sort of trundling out his greatest hits. He's probably having more fun than Keir Starmer. Is that fair, Patrick?
I think so, because Boris Johnson treats Keir Starmer's quite serious and earnest questions with disdain. It's hard not to have fun if you refuse to engage on the terms Keir Starmer sets, which are you have serious and legitimate questions to answer about how you run the country. If you're both demob happy and otherwise uninterested in responding to that sort of sober scrutiny, then of course you're going to have a great laugh. That's Boris Johnson's premiership in a nutshell, is it not?
We should point out the reference to the MP for Saffron Walden. It seems like a long time ago now. That was obviously Kemi Badenoch, who challenged Rishi Sunak on telly the other night and said, you refuse to do anything about COVID fraud.
Again, interesting, though, that Boris Johnson, as he did at PMQs last week, declined even implicitly to have a pop at Rishi Sunak. Now, that, I think, underlines something quite interesting about Boris Johnson's legacy. Because so much of it is we kept Britain ticking over through the pandemic, it's quite difficult for him, and it will always be quite difficult for him, as much as there is a lot of bad blood between the two and a lot of, he clearly despises the man who he made Chancellor. It's going to be very difficult for him when discussing his legacy and trying to weave that yarn about being the Prime Minister who led Britain to unprecedented economic growth after getting out of lockdown, to have a pop at Rishi Sunak, who was at his right hand throughout that and was one of the main architects of our exit from lockdown and the economic measures that kept Britain ticking over during. So it'll be very interesting to see how he plays that one in his memoirs and in his lecture tours and in his appearances on low rent, low budget US cable news stations.
Well, he's always welcome on Times Radio as well.
He can stand in for you when you're on holiday instead of me.
I think he'd probably go down better than Matt Hancock did on the other side yesterday. Right, let's. It feels like this hasn't really risen to the occasion. Lots of you have posted comments saying that you've had more fun looking at my bookcase and having quite an extended conversation about sausages, which I think dates back to a couple of weeks ago when I ate a sausage on YouTube. Each to their own, I suppose. Let's see how this all winds up. There's quite a moment, this. Boris Johnson's last Prime Minister's questions. He's been Prime Minister now for very nearly 3 years. He's been facing Keir Starmer for just over 2 years across the dispatch box. And now this is their last exchange. So we go back to the House of Commons. PMQs Unpacked. This is Keir Starmer.
I think the message coming out of this leadership contest is pretty clear. They got us into this mess and they've no idea how to get us out of it. The Foreign Secretary says we can't go on with our current economic policy. The member for Portsmouth North bemoaned the fact that what we've been doing has not been good enough. And the member for Saffron Walden probably puts it best when she simply asked, why should the public trust us? We haven't exactly covered ourselves in glory. Their words, their future leaders' words. They've trashed every part of their record in government, from dental care and ambulance response times to the highest taxes in 70 years. What message does it send when the candidates to be Prime Minister can't find a single decent thing to say about him, about each other, or their record in government?
Mr. Speaker, what does it say? What does it say about him that no one can name a single policy after 3 years of the Labour opposition, apart from putting up taxes? He's one of those pointless plastic bollards you find around a deserted roadworks on a motorway, Mr. Speaker. We got Brexit done. He voted against it 48 times. We got this country fast out of COVID in spite of everything he would have kept, and when he would have kept us in lockdown. We're fixing social care, Mr. Speaker, when they have no plan and no ideas of their own. And we're now bringing forward measures in the face of strikes, to outlaw wildcat strikes, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you to outlaw wildcat strikes. I can tell you why. I can tell you why he does that funny wooden flapping gesture. I'll tell you why he does that funny wooden flapping gesture. Because, Mr. Speaker, he's got the union barons pulling his strings from beneath him. That's the truth. £100 million, Mr. Speaker. We've restored our democracy and our independence. We've got this country through COVID, and I'm proud to say that whether it comes to tackling climate change or sticking up for Ukraine, we have led the world on the international stage. And I want to thank my friends and colleagues on these benches for everything that they have done.
Well, no applause, no standing ovation.
But no, that'll come if it comes, Patrick, it'll come at the very end. In
I'm
the past,
so sorry.
At the last. I mean, I'm not saying that there definitely will be, but there's.
But no, you think there might be a spontaneous ripple of applause emanating from
something there.
Nadine Dorries and Andrea Jenkins. I
think they're probably still trying to get their heads around the idea that a bollard around some roadworks on a motorway might be unnecessary.
Well, look, this is the party of the Cones hotline, of course. I thought Boris Johnson was going to make a major policy proposal, to establish himself in the great tradition of Tory leaders. But no, alas not. The anti-Keir Starmer Cones hotline. There you go.
And this is a good opportunity. This is a good reason for why you should be watching along live on YouTube, so that you can see that Boris Johnson doing the arms. This is the sort of Keir Starmer, both arms going up and down in unison, which a thing I'd never heard Boris Johnson refer to before. Now decide that's because he's having his strings pulled by the union bosses.
Again, incoherent. And the problem is, look, it's the problem with the Conservative Party. Labour are going to be fighting at the next election the Conservative Party they want to fight, which is either leader will be implementing some degree of austerity, particularly if they're cutting taxes. And they'll be, look, that's exactly the Tory party Labour want to fight after 14 years in opposition. Boris Johnson and whoever succeeds them will not be fighting a Labour Party that is tacking left, that is proud of its links with the unions, that is proposing massive spending and tax commitments. Quite the opposite. So, you're seeing here the next election how difficult it will be for the Conservative Party to pillory and caricature Keir Starmer as a conventional Labour leader. Now, it might be, we're talking about marionettes and wooden puppets. It might be that Keir Starmer's boring, to quote his shadow cabinet, delivery and lack of stage charisma will be the problem that allows the Tories to find a way through. But look, on policy grounds, you're seeing now how tricky it's going to be for whoever succeeds Boris Johnson.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All attention will move on to the leadership contest later on today. But we will bring you the best of the rest from Boris Johnson's final PMQs at the Dispatch Box in just a moment. Patrick McGuire, Times Red Box editor, still with me. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel. In fact, during the news, if you like, I'll show you more of the bookcase. I'll see if I can find the dog. If that's not an incitement to get online, go to the Times Radio YouTube channel, and I'll see if I can find the dog. That's while let's get some news from Tamsin Kent.
Across the UK, on DAB, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
As you've been hearing, Boris Johnson's taking Prime Minister's questions for the final time. He was questioned over why the Tory leadership candidates pulled out of last night's planned TV debate.
I'm not following this thing particularly closely, but my impression is that there's been quite a lot of debate already, and I think the public are having an ample opportunity to view the talent, Mr. Speaker.
Labour leader Keir Starmer told Mr Johnson he knew the relationship between them hadn't been easy, but he wished him and his wife well. Meanwhile, the race to succeed Mr Johnson will come down to two candidates by this evening as MPs choose who'll face a vote of Tory members. 41 properties were destroyed in London yesterday as wildfires broke out in record temperatures of 40.3 degrees. It was the busiest day for London fire brigades since the Second World War, with more than 2,600 calls, and 16 firefighters suffered from heat-related injuries. UK inflation has climbed to a fresh 40-year high, driven by rising fuel and food prices. Consumer price inflation, as measured by the Office for National Statistics, hit 9.4% 9.4% in June, up from 9.1% in May. Check your tickets because someone in the UK's won a £195 million Euro Millions jackpot. It's the biggest national lottery win of all time. The weather, cloudier than recently with some sunny spells, less hot across the UK but still warm. Very warm or hot in parts of the east and southeast. Some heavy showers developing over central England. Toby Gillis has the sport.
Britain's Jake Whiteman says he's still in shock and disbelief that he's the world 1500 metres champion. The Scot stunned the field in Oregon after Laura Muir took bronze in the women's event yesterday.
British middle distance running's in a great place. I was pretty inspired watching Laura. It's hard not to be when she ran as good as that, and I just hoped I could replicate and get a medal. If that was a bronze or silver, I would have been very happy, but to actually come away with the gold like that, that's the dream. It's an absolute dream.
To make the moment even better, Whiteman's father is the stadium announcer and got to tell the crowd, "That's my son and he's world champion," at the moment he crossed the line. Manager Serena Wiegman says England know how to get at Spain in their Euro 2022 quarter-final.
They still have the same style of play. They always do, and they're very tight on the ball. But we've also seen that they leave some spaces. So if they lose the ball, there's a lot of space. So some teams have already showed that vulnerability. So I hope we can exploit that too.
There are likely to be few changes from the lineup that scored 14 without reply in qualifying. Wiegman says she believes in rhythm and consistency. England play Spain tonight in Brighton. It's still unclear whether the manager will be in the dugout. Wiegman needs 2 negative COVID tests. And England one-day cricket captain Jos Buttler insists his team is improving despite yesterday's 62-run defeat against South Africa in Durham. Including the 2020 series loss to India, this is England's 5th white ball defeat in 7 games over 12 days at the start of Buttler's reign as captain. The second match of the 3-game series is on Friday. You can read more on these stories on the Times website or app.
This surely.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio. It's Boris Johnson's last PMQs. Lots of you enjoy joining the news, seeing both the dog and my slippers. I forgot I'd got slippers on. It's a bit nippy this one. You can go online right now to the Times Radio YouTube channel right now. Go to YouTube, go on the YouTubes, search Times Radio, and you can watch along live. Patrick Maguire, Times Red Box editor, still here. Patrick, I think tradition would dictate that on today of all days, we probably do need to hear from the mighty orator that is the SNP's Ian Blackford.
This week has seen historic records set across the United Kingdom. But let's look at the Prime Minister's record-breaking efforts in office. His Tory Brexit slashed £31 billion from the economy. The biggest fall in living standards since the 1970s. People's pay in real terms falling at the fastest rate on record, with the worst economic growth forecast in the G20 outside Russia, and the highest inflation in 40 years. Personally, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister in his capacity as Minister of the Union for driving support for independence to new heights. Mr. Speaker, Westminster is holding Scotland back. The economy is failing and this Prime Minister has driven us to the brink of a recession. Isn't it the case that the Prime Minister's legacy of catastrophic mismanagement has paved the way for the end of the Union?
Mr. Speaker, that's not what I observed. And he talks about records. I'll point to the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, lowest unemployment, as I said, for at or near 50 years, the lowest youth unemployment, fastest growth in the G7 last year in spite of everything. As for the Scottish National nationalist record. Just look at where they are. I'm afraid to say Scottish school standards are not what they should be because of the failure of the SNP. They're failing people who are tragically addicted to drugs, Mr. Speaker, in Scotland. And the people of Scotland are facing another £900 million in tax because of the mismanagement of the SNP.
Oh, it wasn't quite the box office ending we might have liked, Patrick.
Well, we've got another question from Ian Blackford, haven't we? But you know, Ian Blackford was smiling as he asked that. I think they've always enjoyed their little joust, haven't they? And that is the epitaph the SNP would very much like Boris Johnson to have, the Prime Minister who oversaw the end of the Union. It'll be interesting to see if we hear from any of the Northern Ireland MPs, particularly the DUP, from the Unionists and the SDLP from the Nationalist side, whether they offer similar reflections on Boris Johnson's short time in number 10, which may prove to be very consequential in how the rest of the United Kingdom sees Westminster. And Boris Johnson may well have been the catalyst for both of those constitutional shifts, I think.
So I'm not sure I'm not sure if we're taking Ian Blackford's second question now, or are we going to go to Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems?
Oh, you spoilers, Ambassador. You spoilers.
Yeah, go on then. Let's go on then. Let's have a double dose of Ian Blackford as a special occasion. This is Ian Blackford's second question.
Russia's war in Ukraine continues.
No, that's not. I mean, of all the people that we know, that's not Ian Blackford. Yeah, you have lost it, producer Lewis. You have definitely lost it. Who are we going to have instead?
The Prime Minister might believe that nonsense,
Here
but
he
the
comes.
people of Scotland don't, because they know the reality that our NHS is the best performing in the United Kingdom, and education standards under the SNP are moving in the right direction. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's a good look to the people of Scotland, the disdain that the Tories show for our country. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the Prime Minister has time to reflect on his conduct in office with all his new spare time, and I genuinely hope that he finds some peace of mind. The fact is, though, that as well as a record breaker, the Prime Minister is a rule breaker, illegally shutting down Parliament, partying through the pandemic, handing out PPE contracts to cronies, unilaterally changing the ministerial code. And let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is still under investigation because he can't be trusted to tell the truth. Shameful, disgraceful and a complete waste of Scotland's time. This is how the people of Scotland will remember this Prime Minister. Isn't it the case that the Prime Minister and his government should have had its last day a long time ago? Quite simply, Downing Street is no place for a lawbreaker.
Well, look, Mr. Speaker, I think on the points, the personal abuse stuff, I think he's talking a load of tosh. But when he's retired to his croft, which may be all too soon, Mr. Speaker, I hope that he will reflect on his long-running campaign to break up the greatest country in the world. And I hope he will reflect on the pointlessness of what he is trying to do, and think instead about the priorities of the people of Scotland, which I think are about all the issues that he thought were trivial, about their education, about crime, Mr. Speaker, and about the burden of taxation that they are unnecessarily placing on the people of Scotland.
Oh dear, but that was a sort of ended. I thought there might have been a bit of bromance at the end there, but no place for a lawbreaker.
It was
Boris
quite
Johnson saying,
wasn't it?
Boris Johnson saying he won't indulge in the personal abuse, and then make some joke about how Ian Blackford's going to be out on his ear and back on his retiring on his croft, humble crofter that he is.
Well, exactly. Two classic jibes at Ian Blackford there from Boris Johnson. The first, the mocking reference to his croft, which, as we all know, is a mansion with about 6 separate wings and a life-size replica of Hugh Hefner's grotto. We saw
in the early days of the pandemic. Every week, Ian Blackford beamed into PMQs over Zoom from a different room. He got through about 2 months worth before he ran out of rooms. I think it was extraordinary.
And the second, briefly, he was talking about Ian Blackford may well be out for job himself soon, which is the irony of all of this. And Ian Blackford's holier than thou posturing is that he himself has been accused of overseeing a sexual harassment scandal and giving preferment to his own, not deputy chief whip, as in the case of Chris Pincher, but his own chief whip was accused of sexual harassment, and the SNP leadership at Westminster gave him preferential treatment. So it's quite funny. Well, obviously the substance of the case isn't funny at all, but it's quite, a bit of a piquant irony there for Ian Blackford to be crowing over the demise of Boris Johnson when his own parliamentary career might end in very similar circumstances.
So I teased you a moment ago, Patrick, with the prospect of hearing from Ed Davey. But I think now, because, we want all the big beasts, it's a big day.
Sir Ed Davey to you and I, Matt.
Sir Ed Davey, if you don't mind. As the leader of the Lib Dems, let's take a listen.
As the Prime Minister leaves office, I'm sure the whole House is looking forward to him completing his book on Shakespeare. We wait to read what he really thinks about tragic figures brought down by their vaulting ambition, or scheming politicians who conspire to bring down a tyrannical leader. The candidates, Mr. Speaker, now plotting to take his place, all profess that they will bring a fresh start, a clean break from his government. But does the Prime Minister not agree with me that a fresh start and a clean break would require a new mandate from the British people? And before they strut and fret their hour upon the stage, there should be a general election.
Mr. Speaker, I think that Polonius, that's who he is. What you need, more matter with less art, Mr. Speaker. The only thing you need to know, if there were to be a general election, of course, the Liberal Democrats would rightly get thrashed, because that would be. That is the moment when the public actually look with horror at what Liberal Democrat policies really are, and all these rural voters would discover the massive green taxes that they would like to apply, and the only risk is that there could be some kind of crackpot coalition between those guys and the Lib Dems and the Scottish Nationalists to put that into effect. That is what we must prevent.
I don't know why that jibe at the Lib Dems tickled me, even though it was particularly lame. Patrick Maguire, a decent, not a bad gag from Ed Davey, Boris Johnson's long-awaited book. I was looking it up. So he once declared about £100,000 of an advance for a book as yet unwritten. Suggestions it was worth £500,000 in total, but presumably be worth a lot more now. This book has taken longer than probably any work of Shakespeare itself.
It's taken longer than Guns N' Roses' famous album Chinese Democracy, which took about 15 years to record, and then when it came out, it was absolutely terrible. So that's probably, and that's probably a suitably lowbrow comparison for Boris Johnson. I'm told by people around Keir Starmer, by the way, that they expressly forbade Keir Starmer from making any Shakespeare jokes because they thought they're too predictable and too rubbish. And I think, as you said, not a bad joke from Ed Davey, but I don't think Ed Davey's ever told a good joke in his life. So it's a low old bar for Sir Ed.
I wasn't aware there was someone in the Labour leader's office whose job it was to rule out predictable and lame jokes.
They're not paying them enough.
We're not. We're not. Okay. Where are we going now, Lewis? Who are we? Okay, well, this is it. It's all over. Basically, there were lots of sycophantic things with the Tory backbenchers and opposition people being rude. But this is it. This is Boris Johnson's last hurrah at Prime Minister's Questions. It's quite a moment. Thank you for listening along and watching along over the past couple of years here on Times Radio. PMQs Unpacked. We can now go to the House of Commons. This is Boris Johnson's last moment at the dispatch box.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my right honourable friend, and I want to use the last few seconds, Mr. Speaker, to give some words of advice to my successor, whoever he or she may be. Number one, stay close to the Americans, stick up for the Ukrainians, stick up for freedom and democracy everywhere. Cut taxes and deregulate wherever you can to make this the greatest place to live and invest, which it is. I love the Treasury, but remember that if we'd always listened to the Treasury, we wouldn't have built the M25 or the Channel Tunnel. Focus on the road ahead. Focus on the road ahead, but always remember to check the rear-view mirror. And remember, above all, it's not Twitter that counts. It's the people that sent us here. And yes, the last few years have been the greatest privilege of my life. And it's true that I helped to get the biggest Tory majority for 40 years and a huge realignment in UK politics, Mr. Speaker. We've transformed our democracy and restored our national independence, as my right honourable friend says. I've helped to get this country through a pandemic and helped save another country from barbarism. And frankly, that's enough to be going on with. Mission largely accomplished. For now, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my right honourable friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here, and hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.
Oh. In fact, we're going to hear some of the applause. There is a standing ovation in the House of Commons. On the Conservative side, Boris Johnson making his way out through the...
Some Tory MPs much slower to get to their feet than others there, I think.
On the opposite side, definitely the SNP and I think the Labour side, defiantly sitting down. In fact, making their way out, abandoning the House of Commons chamber on the other side. So not the picture of unity we saw when Tony Blair, when David Cameron, when Theresa May stepped down, where there was a round of standing ovation from across all sides of the House. I suppose to some extent, Patrick, a sign of what an ultimately divisive figure that Boris Johnson is and was, and also the manner of his departure.
Yes, totally. On one level, it is a reflection of the personality Boris Johnson is, the nature of his departure, and just how sour that has been, and what a polarising figure he's also been. But look, it's impossible, not that the Labour Party or certainly the SNP would have been inclined to anyway, to give a standing ovation to a eulogy for oneself that was so self-congratulatory. Listen to that back. He said, "I saved another country from barbarism." He was effectively casting himself as a mixture between, Winston Churchill, the Terminator, and Jesus Christ at points there. And, what did that not have in common with the speeches you played over that lovely twinkly piano montage earlier? Well, all of those speeches, David Cameron, Theresa May, Tony Blair, were all sort of hymns to the office being bigger than its inhabitant, to politics meaning something more than the ego. And look, it's not a criticism of Boris Johnson, or a churlish criticism of Boris Johnson, rather, to say that is not what his speech was about at all. It was about, I have been vindicated, Rishi Sunak ruined my premiership, that dig at the Treasury was none too subtle, was it? And I'll be back, hasta la vista, baby. But when he said, that is that for now, I'll be back, Boris Johnson does two kinds of cultural references. He either does the classical or 1980s blockbusters, the mayor from Jaws. I'm sure he's done a couple of Ghostbusters gags at some point, and now he's doing Terminator. I think that's a signal of intent for Boris Johnson that this is not the end, but that doesn't make for a very conventional or tear-jerking goodbye to the Commons for now, does it?
No, I think you're right. His repeated references to being back, whether that's back in the pages of the Telegraph as a columnist or back in the House of Commons, back in number 10.
Overnights on Times Radio.
He's very welcome to it. Patrick Maguire, thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of you for watching. You can get Patrick in your inbox every weekday, Monday to Friday, just after 8:30. Patrick will be in your inbox, the web box. And Patrick, you're in the hot seat next week and the week after.
I am. I'm warming your throne right now, Matt, sitting in the big chair. I'm very much looking forward to it. If people aren't on holiday, or indeed if you are on holiday, anywhere with an internet connection, you can get Times Radio on your phone now, can't you? So tune in. We'll be having a great laugh.
I'll be listening from the deck chairs in Lyme Regis. The major breakthrough on the YouTube channel today, an appearance by the dog has gone down better than any of the exchanges at PMQs, and someone's now posting spam in there, which apparently is a sign that we've broken through.
Can I just respond to one question that's been asked repeatedly by one YouTuber? My Greg's order is 2 vegan sausage rolls, although I'm not a vegan. I just prefer them to normal sausage rolls. So there you go.
Well, there we are. You're not going to get invited on Piers Morgan with that sort of attitude. Final comment posted on YouTube in reference to Boris Johnson saying, "Mission mostly accomplished." That's nothing one wants to hear in bed or in Parliament. On that note, let's leave it there. Patrick Maguire, Times Red Box Editor, thanks so much for that. That brings us to the end of PMQs Unpacked. Up next, we've just got time to do the quiz.
In an ever-changing world, it's vital to stay on top of the